What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the second installment of my 5-minute reviews. Emphasis on the 5-minute reviews, guys. Obviously, it can go a little bit shorter, a little bit longer. Don't hold me to it. But the band and the album that we're going to be checking out today is the French band, the Dali Thundering Concept, with their 2022 album, Almighty Men.
Almighty Men.
Let me introduce you guys to this album who may have not heard it before by saying that this is one of the most intricate, creative, concept-based albums that I have ever heard. It kind of follows the life cycle of a straw, like literally a straw that you drink your drink from, okay? Now, I know that's already a little bit weird, but it has a very, very, very interesting way of getting this story across. It's kind of about the environment, us humans and our involvement in the environment, and basically the decay of society, you know, all based around the environment. The basis of the entire story is following the life cycle of a straw, and each track kind of goes through a different dimension of the straw's life cycle. But the way it's put forward as a concept is absolutely unbelievably creative. Because the nature of the band being so experimental and unique and progressive, it's hard to really nail them down to a particular sound and to give you an example of bands that they sound like. But I think the overall janky nature of their guitars is quite Tesseract-esque. There's probably other bands that maybe you guys are like screaming out that it is very similar to, but because of my somewhat limited knowledge of massive amounts of bands, I can really only put them down to Tesseract and Kadinja as well, which is a band that I'm only recently familiar with, mainly because of the tones of the guitars are very, very janky. Maybe like old Monuments to a certain extent, but vocally, I guess they're a little bit more in the deathcore realm when it comes to vocals, but it's not something that's like off-putting that I would normally dislike. So we're moving on to my least favorite, and I'm gonna cop out a little bit on this one. I know in the Johnny Booth reaction I did give my least favorite, and I will try going forward to actually give my least favorite track, but listening to this album again, I really just can't pick out one particular track that I dislike the most. There's a few tracks in there that are maybe not the best tracks. There's definitely like standouts on the album for sure, which we'll get into, but just in terms of a least favorite track, even after my first listen in the reaction that you guys can get on Patreon, I just couldn't pick one out. And I did say, like, guys, I'm actually not going to pick a worst track, so I know it's a bit of a cop out, but go listen to the album yourselves and maybe you guys will have a very obvious one. But I just couldn't pick out something that I really didn't enjoy musically, if that makes sense. I'm going to say my grower of this album is Candid Monster. Now, this is the last track on the album. It's track number 10, and it features Clem Richard. And that leads us on to the best track on the album, which is the track that I was introduced to this album by, which was requested on stream. It is The Sea Starts Here, which is featuring Ryo Kinoshita, which is the ex-Crystal Lake vocalist. And this track is absolutely unbelievable. From a musical standpoint, it is so creative. There's like a dance breakdown part at the end that gets very EDM, which is just so creative, so unique, and really summarizes the Dali concepts, the Dali Thundering Concepts sound overall for me. The actual concept of the track up until that point goes into like a really, really unique part where basically the straw, which is, you know, followed throughout its journey, throughout the entirety of the album, gets to a part where it basically gets washed up into a sewer and it meets the Rat King, which I believe is a part of the story. And I believe that is Ryo who's playing the part of the Rat King.
Shut the fuck up!
And basically the straw has like an enlightening moment where the Rat King basically wakes him up and says, look, you are useless to these humans, because the straw is very much so of the opinion that the humans that it's being used by are like the Lord and Savior, like these almighty men. The whole concept feels like Sausage Party. If you guys remember that movie where like all the food comes to life and the food like worship humans, but then the very, very blunt realization that the humans are actually like the food's enemy because obviously they want to get eaten. Maybe without context of this album going in, like that it's very, very concept based, you might miss a lot of the nuance to it, but it does really add a lot more to the musical nature of the album. So my track of the album is The Sea Starts Here. So, some small criticisms of the album. Now, I did check this out on Spotify, and I am absolutely amazed by the fact that this has been released the way it was, because from my remembrance of Savages, which was an absolutely fantastic album, which I heard earlier on this year, I was very, very impressed by the overall sound, the mixing, the mastering, the production. But on this album, I don't know, someone dropped the ball horrifically. But basically, if you listen to this album on Spotify, first of all, I probably wouldn't even recommend doing that because there is a very, very abrasive, abrupt stop between each track, which is not supposed to be the way it was actually released, because if you watch the actual album stream on YouTube, it doesn't have that, and it has a whole video to go along with it. So if you are going to listen to this, which I do highly recommend if you're into that like Tesseract, Genty, concept based style that's very like deathcore vocal orientated as well. There's a lot of fun creative moments throughout the album. I would definitely say check it out on YouTube as a first listen, because I had to keep stopping it to see if it was my Spotify that was an issue, but I don't mind them. There's no way that was an intentional transition. A lot of people on my Discord and Patreon have mirrored the idea that yes, that is actually a problem with the mix or the Spotify upload, I guess, because it's not even actually a problem with the mix, it's just the Spotify version. Every track has this horrible, complete abrasive stop between each track, which completely throws you off, especially with an album that is so deeply ingrained in a concept. When you have like this really abrupt stop, it kind of takes you out of that world for a second. You have to like try to get back into it. I know it's only a small detail, but I think that's very important when rating an album. So that was like my main gripe with this album, because otherwise the concept is so cool. It's very, very creative. One of the most unique things I've heard full stop across the board. However, in saying that, I would say it's maybe a little bit on the short side. In saying that, I do like a short album, but this one just did feel like it was a little bit void of some musical content. The content of the actual concept is so rich, but I think the musical actual content that you can get out of it is, you know, from a single standpoint, there's very little you can actually pull from the album. For a 35-minute long album, you're missing a good few minutes of just like the scene being set. So from a musical standpoint, there's definitely a lot to be desired there, but overall as a concept and like artistic piece of musical work, it is fantastic. So my rating, with all things considered, is a 8 out of 10. Obviously, if you are going to listen to this in your own time, guys, I highly suggest checking out the YouTube version. Do not listen on Spotify because it is definitely a lackluster experience. So guys, that is all from me. Please do let me know what your opinions are in the comment section down below. If you want to see me react to the full album, all of that will be on patreon.com/DrewFortune. All the links for that are in the description, guys. And yeah, please like the video if you did enjoy, if you enjoy these like shorter album reviews. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are after you listen to the album. Let me know in the comments. That's all from me, guys. I'm signing out. Look after yourselves. See you in the next one. Cheers.